of the charities that I've got listening, you know, all of the people we've got listening on this webinar right now, put it into a context that you'll be able to apply within your own organizations, because it's all well and good to see how the BHF have done it, but you know, having a framework that you can use, and especially if maybe you're not quite where the BHF are, and you've got a little bit more of a ways to go on your own digital transformation journey, I wanted to give you some pointers on what you can do within your own organizations. So for that reason, I've structured this case study in a slightly unusual way. I've actually taken, and what you're seeing on your screen here is our latest report, or one of our latest reports about customer experience. It's Customer Experience Survival of the Fittest. And I'm actually going to talk through the British Heart Foundation's case study within the customer experience framework. And then so within all of that, you're going to find out, first of all, what are the different elements that you need to be focusing on in terms of your own digital journey, and how to prioritize. So, you know, looking at where you are in terms of delivering excellent customer experience or supporter experience within your charity, and how, you know, what you should be doing first and foremost in order to start that transformation journey. So that's the structure of the talk, and I'm going to keep it to about 45-50 minutes so that we leave some time for questions at the end. So I've got a lot to cover off, so I'm going to get started, and I'm going to get started in a slightly unusual way, which is a bit of existentialism. First of all, asking, why do we exist, right? Because the issue around customer experience or supporters and what supporters want, you know, the first thing is really just thinking about, you know, human need and human behavior. And, you know, before we even start talking about web or digital, it really benefits to go straight back to that basic question, right? And whether or not you believe in Maslow's hierarchy of human need, you know, it doesn't really matter what model you subscribe to. The first thing to bear in mind when looking at customer experience is that human beings, since the beginning of time and through well into the future, care about sort of two camps of things. So to survive, we want wealth, security, physical well-being. To thrive, we want self-esteem, social acceptance, right? That doesn't change. That is not a new concept and will never change. So perhaps the more important question you can be asking is, why do you exist? Why do you exist as a charity, for example? Now, the answer to this question is usually found in your mission statement, you know, that big, lofty world problem-solving statement that's maybe on your About Us page that people don't really think too much about in their day-to-day operations. But the reason why the mission statement, or that the answer to that question, why do you exist, is so important, and you'll see how it's so important for British Heart Foundation, is because really this is the beginning point of your transformation journey. This is where transformation begins. Now, let me illustrate a bit of what I mean. So my company, Precedent, our mission statement is meaningful ideas intelligently delivered. Now, what's interesting about this mission statement is that my company was actually founded in 1989, when meaningful ideas intelligently delivered meant we built CD-ROMs out of our one studio in Shoreditch. So fast forward 26 years, and obviously that mission statement, that stayed the same, but how we deliver to that mission statement has had to evolve drastically. So instead of CD-ROMs, we're now doing digital strategy, we're building websites, we're building solutions for tablet, for mobile, for wearable tech, you know, we're doing whole digital transformations. The point being that the why has stayed the same, the how has changed drastically. And how have we decided what to change and how to evolve our business? All comes down to customer experience, trying to keep up with the changing ways we can meet those basic human needs, the ones that I started out by talking, you know, how can we use technology to meet those needs a bit better? So the point being that every organization starts out meeting the needs of its audiences, right? You wouldn't survive your first year if you weren't meeting the needs of the audiences, but as time goes on, needs evolve, people's behavior, the technology, that changes, and suddenly you start to see a gap emerge. The why and the how are no longer aligned. And this is a perception that we get a lot in, you know, in Precedent and around the sector, the nonprofit sectors, that supporters are disloyal, when in actual fact, supporters are unengaged. You know, they understand what kind of choice they have available to them. They're able to engage with lots of different organizations, and of course their life is much bigger than just their single engagement with one point, with one organization. So simple things, simple kind of customer experience issues, like they can't donate easily, they can't find advice or support, they hate all the direct mail that they keep getting, they can't see where the money goes, or that they don't feel valued or listened to. Well, these sort of typical problems that a charity might experience add up to some pretty significant customer experience long-term effects. You know, they're not giving money, they're not fundraising, they're not referring others, they cancel their direct debit, they don't come back. So if your supporters are dissatisfied, the charity is at risk. And I think we can all agree with that concept. So the question becomes, how do you adapt? You know, how did the BHF adapt to its supporters' evolving needs, and how do you and your charities adapt to your supporters' evolving needs? Well, I said that I was going to bring this back to our customer experience report and help to frame this in the context of customer experience. And so for that reason, I'm going to take you through the British Heart Foundation case study according to our care model. So this is Precedent's care model, and it breaks down like this. Culture, how you value your audiences. Analysis, how you gather feedback and react to it. Rational, how your core offer stacks up to the rest. And emotional, how you elevate and delight your audiences. So that's how I'm going to take you through the BHF case study, but it still doesn't answer that question of where to start, right? This is just a long list of things you need to do. So for that reason, I'm also going to incorporate our fitness test. And the fitness test is another component of our customer experience report, and basically it breaks down like this. It's judging how fit you are as an organization to adapt to change. You know, where are you on that transformation journey? You know, right at the bottom and endangered, or all the way up at the top to champion. But let me put it into a context I think we all can understand. Travel, because at some point we're all travelers. So in my top spot, in the champion spot, I've got Disney, and it doesn't take much imagination to understand why Disney is a customer experience champion. You know, whether it's 1950 or 2015, Disney are always using whatever kind of technologies, whatever things they have at their disposal to try to live up to that mission statement, that most magical place on earth. You know, in the 1950s, they couldn't really do very much with technology, so, you know, magical place on earth meant that it was just very neat and tidy. If you dropped a piece of litter, someone would just magically appear out of nowhere and clean it up, and it was like spotlessly clean. And you know, they told their people wearing the mascot costumes never to take their heads off, even if they started to get overwhelmed by heat and started to feel a bit ill. It's like, no, you never take your head off, you never break character. You know, that was magic in 1950s. Now, of course, Disney has come a long way, are doing some really incredible things with wearable technology, and actually I'll share a little snippet of that towards the end of the talk. But that is what makes Disney a customer experience champion. It's not just that they're profitable, because of course they're profitable, it's that they're constantly living up to that mission statement, and they're using digital and new technologies as a way of fulfilling that. And of course the result for Disney is, you know, people are willing to get Disney tattoos on their bodies. You can't get much more brand affinity than that. You know, they'll deck their children out in Disney attire. You know, so that's the champion spot. Now let's go down one spot to Contender, where we've got Amsterdam, the digitally connected city. And I've chosen Amsterdam as my contender because Amsterdam have put a huge amount of investment as a destination marketing region. They put a huge amount of investment into technology to make it easy to travel in Amsterdam. So if you get the Amsterdam card, or if you have it on your mobile, your tablet, etc., you can get on public transportation, you can get into museums and attractions, you can access maps, you can, you know, all these sorts of tools and things that you have at your disposal that you can use. And what does that mean for tourists, for travelers in Amsterdam? That they can focus on the experience. They don't have to focus on the logistics. And it's for that reason that Amsterdam's tourism and tourism revenue has been steadily increasing, but also the return rate of tourism is increasing, you know, and that is what makes it a contender. Now we get to the bottom half of the scale, And you might be wondering why I've picked Las Vegas as exposed. Well, this is one that when I run this as a big seminar or I present this in a conference, I'll usually get people to put their hands up to say, okay, who here has been to Las Vegas? Now, I can't do that on a webinar, unfortunately, but I'll tell you what normally happens. I say, who here has been to Las Vegas? Lots of hands go up in the air. Then I say, keep your hand in the air if you had an amazing time and your expectations were met, if not exceeded, and every single hand drops. And the reason for that is that Las Vegas has been focusing so much on marketing, on attracting people, and not on delivering on all those expectations that they've been setting. And so really, you go to Vegas, but you don't actually have the time of your life, and maybe the next time you go on a trip, you decide to go somewhere else. And for that reason, Las Vegas is spending on marketing is increasing year on year and year on year, but the amount of market share that they're gaining from that increased spend is no longer matching up. They don't match up. So that is what makes Las Vegas exposed. And if Las Vegas continues in the same vein, they might end up getting knocked down a step even further to endangered, like the Caribbean. Now, you might be really surprised to see the Caribbean in the bottom spot, but the Caribbean have actually declared a state of economic emergency because tourism revenue for the region is in such a significant decline, and every single expert in the tourism sector is pointing to the Caribbean's lack of innovation amongst its suppliers, amongst its providers, that it is difficult to travel in the Caribbean. It is difficult to book. It is difficult to find your way around. If something goes wrong, you get mugged, something like that, it is difficult to access help and resources. And connection and digital tools and connecting, a little bit like Amsterdam, would go huge ways to bring the Caribbean out of that endangered spot. But unfortunately, they're starting from that very, very beginning point on that journey. So that is the fitness scale. Now, you might already be thinking where your charity might sit on that fitness scale. And, where is pretty common is for people to be in the exposed category, where you might be you're focusing on your business as usual. You've got your campaigns, you've got your initiatives, you've got your things that you're churning out year on year, but there's that worry, there's that underlying worry of, is there someone who's going to knock us out of that spot? Are we still going to be relevant in a couple of years' time? And, and that's basically the situation that British Heart Foundation were in, which might sound surprising actually, because the BHF are such a big and well-known charity in the UK, but the truth of it was their content management system at the time was end of life. It was no longer going to be supported. They had a lot of different back-end systems that had been created at different times that didn't speak to each other. They had a really, really arduous workflow process of trying to update content on their website. And worst of all, it was a very siloed organization. Each different department was used to working almost autonomously. And then the central marketing team and the central digital team would work really hard behind the scenes trying to kind of stitch everything together so that it would feel like one user journey from beginning to end, or one marketing experience even from beginning to end. But all of that inefficiency and all that fragmentation was really starting to take its toll, and that's what made BHF decide, no, we have to make a big investment, we have to do it now, and we're going to start with the online home of BHF. We're going to create a true online home for BHF, and that's the case study that I'm going to take you through. Or in other words, how the BHF decided to care with digital. Starting with, and again, I'm going to go through this using the care model, and I'm going to put the BHF examples throughout, but I'm going to end each point on what you can do within your own charity and points that you can take away to apply, okay? And I'm also going to give you a couple of famous cases as well, just mixed in, just so that you can get a sense of, in the wider world, how these different points apply, all right? So that's the format I'm going to use for the rest of the talk. Starting with, if you're endangered, you're going to focus on your culture, how you value your audiences. So before we get into BHF, I thought I would give you one of those famous examples. And normally I would ask people to try to guess who this the mission statement of this company belongs to provide our customers with the most convenient access to media entertainment. And unfortunately, though, it's a trick question and nobody ever gets it right, because the mission statement, the big reason for existence of this company, actually belonged to Blockbuster, unfortunately. And that's the point I'm trying to make about culture and focusing on your audiences, how much you value your audiences. The reason that Blockbuster went from endangered to just extinct was because it valued its retail model more than it valued customer preference. And it was that rigid fixation on maintaining its traditional retail model that allowed a swift-moving competitor to swoop in and start stealing market share. Now, a lot of people are surprised when they see this slide because a lot of us forget that Netflix started as a mail-order DVD company. But you know, that just goes to show how much Netflix's culture cares about customer preference, because the second that Netflix spotted that customer preference was shifting yet again away from mail-order DVDs and towards online streaming, it started changing its business inside. It started shifting its resources, its skill sets, its staff, you know, infrastructure, everything started to shift towards online streaming, to the point where today, of course, there is no mail-order DVD component to the business anymore. It's all online streaming, and Netflix continues to take it farther. So paying attention to people's viewing habits, starting to create their own original content. You know, Orange is the New Black. I've got a screenshot up here of the release of season 2, because even the way that they release content is paying attention to customer preference, because they noticed that people tend to watch entire seasons all at once. They're not watching an episode here and there, you know, once a week. They're watching it all at once, and Netflix term it binge watching. So when they released season 2 of Orange is the New Black, they decided, you know what, let's go with binge watching. We'll release every episode at once. Now, this was met by huge criticism of experts in the entertainment business, in the sector, saying, oh, you don't do that. You're going to lose all your subscribers. When in actual fact, the second that they released Orange is the New Black second season, they had also increased their subscription prices, right? So that's a negative. And they'd also cut thousands of titles out of their library. And even still, the number of people, the number of new subscribers, and the revenue for the company, well, let me just show you. I'll show you. On the left is going to be the value of the company from the quarter prior to Orange is the New Black being released, and then the number on the other side is the value after the release. See, so more than double the value of the company, and it's always through listening to customer preference. So that's the entertainment industry. What about the British Heart Foundation? Well, the British Heart Foundation's reason for existence is to win the fight against heart disease. Now, bear that in mind when I show you the old website. Now, the old website is basically an organization chart, right? You've got all the different departments all shouting for their space on the homepage. You know, even that menu on the top, it's all the different departments, right? It's nothing about the user, why the user would want to come to the site, why, you know, when you do hit the site, what's going to happen, you know, when you go click on one of these many links. Well, it's going to take you deep into one of the silos, and you're going to get treated like an individual customer of just that department. You're not going to get treated like someone who is trying to win in the fight against heart disease. And you know, this idea of being very department driven and being very internally focused permeated through the entire website. So for example, this is the donation journey as it used to be on the website. I'd click donate, and the first thing it would ask me for would be my first name, last name, email address, confirm email address. Already as a user, I'm starting to think that's a lot of information to give when I just wanted to donate £5, right? Then it asked me for my full postal address, my telephone number, my mobile number, and these tick boxes. Select if you do not wish the British Heart Foundation to contact you by post, contact you by mail, contact you by email. You know, everything about this form reeks of marketing data, right? It's the departments wanting to get information so that they can turn that person who's making their one-off donation into someone who might be a fundraiser in the future, or someone who might be a long-term donor in the future. Trouble is, this whole process is making me, the user, forget why I went to the website in the first place. So the very first thing that we had to address with BHF was figuring out how to make the website, this new virtual home for BHF actually for the user and make it clear that customer preference is what's going to be driving the experience. So here's the old website, and here's the new website. And not only is everything about the user and trying to get them access to the content that they're looking for, but even the way that the site behaves to the different user interactions is all about trying to reinforce why that person's come to the website. So for example, now if I click on the center of the screen, I would like to give a £10 donation, that little pop-up appears. It tells me of every £1 I donate, 81p goes directly to helping our team. You know, little details like that. The donation journey now, the first question that I get asked as a user isn't for my postcode and my phone number, it's why are you making this donation? You know, then I can say, hey, I'm going to make it in memory of someone. Now, the result of this has been a massive increase in online donations. Now, granted, this 277% increase in online donations, there are other factors at play in there. This is comparing the December 2014 when the site launched to the December prior. And, you know, they'd done a launch campaign with the website and everything. But the key thing is that the conversion rate shot up as well. So it's a 29% conversion rate compared to an 8% conversion rate on the old form. And why? All because even down to the detail of the form is caring about the user preference and not driving it from a marketing perspective. Now, interestingly, that form still asks you your marketing preferences and your postcode and all that sort of stuff, but now it's at the end of the form after it's already reinforced to you why you should want to donate in the first place. So that's just one of the many ways that the culture within BHF had to change in order to start to loosen their fixation on things like marketing and internally department-driven things, and instead start being more about a user experience. So what I would say in terms of advice, you know, for your own organizations is that if you do think you're in this endangered spot, the first thing that you should be doing is looking to address those culture points. You know, these items here are kind of tick box items, so if you're doing these 3 things already, then you're probably not endangered and you don't have to worry. You can go up to the next stage on the fitness scale. But those 3 things are, first of all, you're including CX in your strategic plan. So you know where you want to take your charity in 5 years, fine. Where are you going to take your supporter in 5 years? You know, where on that Maslow's hierarchy of human need are you going to move them up as a result of engaging with you over such a long period of time? Okay, so that's the first thing. The second thing, you're using metrics to inform management decisions. So not just informing marketing, but actual management decisions. You know, are you changing what events you're running? Are you changing what products or services that you're offering? And then lastly, you're investing in ways to solve customer experience issues. Everyone's got budget available for new campaigns, you know, and everyone's got budget available for business as usual. Very few organizations think to keep budget held aside so that when a customer experience problem is spotted on the website or anywhere, that they've got the budget available to just do something about that. So that's your checklist. Now, if you are endangered, here are the 3 next steps you can take to address it. So the first is to do a short, sharp business case. Pick the thing that you're failing at the most, that you know is causing the most problems. Just do a business case for fixing that. And that business case can consist of what the competitors are doing, you know, to do a bit of benchmarking, and an audit of what your current customer or your current supporter feedback is saying to you. Once you've got that business case together, you get a bit of funding, you make those changes, you put them live on the website or wherever those problems are occurring, and then that continues to build the bigger business case for more transformation going forward. You know, the BHF did not get investment all in one go by their board to redo the whole website and do all this big expensive work without first having to prove the value of web and prove it over the series of lots of small improvements. You know, we did lots of microsites with them, we did lots of campaigns, digital campaigns with them before we started building this massive website, and that was what helped convince the board that this is what was needed in order to take BHF into 2020. The next thing you can do is come up with a vision and roadmap, and this is something you can get senior leadership together to do. And what I always say is the best kind of vision is something that fits on one page, and the best kind of roadmap is something that you can explain in, you know, a 15-minute conversation. And the reason they need to be this short and sharp and concise is so that people get enthused and they understand where they're going, and they can feel a sense of confidence in joining that journey. Now, granted, there will be more detail held elsewhere. The roadmap will need to get elaborated and turned into an implementation plan in different sections of it, but at the very first instance, just understanding where you want to be and how many steps away you are from being there is so valuable. And then the third thing is UX and design. So testing different variations on your current website, on social media, etc., fixing critical journeys, and again, using the metrics from that to go back into that business case. Okay, so that's culture, that's if you're endangered, and that's what the BHF are doing to prove that their culture is in support of their users. Next up, if you're exposed. If you're exposed, you have to start with analysis, how you gather feedback and react to it. And for another famous example, I'm going to start with this unlikely crew of people who no longer have their office in this man's apartment. Their office is now here. And in case you don't recognize the company or you don't recognize the founder, this is Alibaba. This is China's or Asia's biggest e-commerce e-commerce giant, really. They are actually responsible for more e-commerce in the world than Amazon and eBay combined. You know, sales on an astronomical level. But the reason why I use these guys as an example for analysis is because if you compare the way that they worked at this stage with the way that they work at this stage, there is one fundamental principle that is still true. And that is, okay, first of all, I'll explain this screenshot. This screenshot is Alibaba workers watching live transactions on Single Person's Day in China. Now, Single Person's Day is like the anti-Valentine's Day in China. It's the idea is you're supposed to go out, if you're a single person, you're supposed to go and buy yourself a present. And so e-commerce is obviously huge on Single Person's Day. And what all these staff are doing is they're watching live transactions, and they're watching to see anomalies and changes in patterns. And basically the second that something happens that they can't predict or that, you know, or that they think is an opportunity, they break off a team immediately to go and investigate it, to go and prototype something, to launch something new. You know, they're just constantly doing this, and that behavior, that close attention to metrics and data hasn't changed since they were still operating out of Jack Ma's apartment with the original staff. Now, I know what you're thinking. You probably don't have this style of analytics in your organization. You probably have something like Google Analytics, but this is something that BHF recognized the value of data and the value of having that kind of deep insight into what the users were doing. So in addition to still using Google Analytics, and I should say, the last Single Person's Day in China, Alibaba actually made $1 billion US in just 17 minutes of sales. So that's obviously working really well for them. What I was saying about British Heart Foundation is they wanted to keep using Google Analytics, obviously, but they wanted something more powerful in addition to that. So building the website onto Sitecore, one of the things that we made sure to do is enable everything with the digital marketing suite, first of all, so that whether a user is logged in, whether they're not logged in, you can see all the different complex interactions relating to all those different users. And you can start to build personas and profiles based on what kind of content people are viewing. And this is going to allow the BHF to roll out some pretty fancy stuff with personalization, especially now that the site has been up and running and collecting data for a while. But there are more things that we did because of this attention to analysis. So for example, publications are a big business driver on the BHF website. Understanding what the popular publications are, who's requesting them, you know, who's printing versus who's downloading, all of these analytics are things that the BHF are now paying close attention to decide future publication strategy, and as well what sort of things they can be making digital only versus having to do the heavy print cost. We've also done quite a bit around events and analysis with events. So for London to Brighton, the big flagship event for BHF, we've built them a dashboard so that they can see not just live signups and who's forming teams, etc., but that they can actually do forecasting and predicting based on anticipated team sizes. So once the sign-ups or once the registration is open, they can be doing forecasting and predicting of team size to help them run the event, and they're doing all that with an online dashboard. And then through down to donating goods. So furniture and electrical donations are worth over £31 million to the British Heart Foundation. And so building them, and this is something we're actually going into a next phase for, building them advanced dashboards so that their furniture and electrical shops will be able to see on a tablet how they're performing in terms of responding to donation collection requests, how much they're shifting in terms of selling products, etc. And all of this run through the website. So if you're exposed, the point being that you have to start with analysis, this idea of understanding how people are interacting with you and what their needs and wants are in order to decide how to deliver a better experience. So checklist time. You're engaging with users to understand their changing needs. BHF run a huge amount of user testing and membership engagement, etc., and that's on an ongoing basis. They do that both online and offline, and throughout the entire web project, they were doing engagement with their existing supporters, and now that the site is live, they do a huge amount of things like multivariant testing to decide page designs and decide new improvements, etc. And they're also just keeping their finger on the pulse in terms of understanding what kind of future needs their supporters might need, so that things can be built now in place, and ready for those needs to come about. Next up, you're collating touchpoint data into a single customer view. Now, what's interesting about the BHF solution is that it does connect with their CRM, and we're continuing to do more improvements on that so that even more things can pass fluidly between the CRM and Sitecore. But the whole reason for this being that BHF wanted one place where they can see all this information and analyze all this data, and so getting them to that point of single customer view is going to take a long time because of all the different systems that they've got running. But having the website built in Sitecore and doing the integration, even just the early stages of integration with the CRM, has already moved them, years ahead of where they were before. And the next step is comparing past behavior to current to look for trends. So, all of that detail around publications and events and, all these different big business areas for BHF, that's what they're using to come up with their new strategies, what they're going to be doing next, etc. So if you think you might be in the exposed categories and you want to start looking more at analysis and understanding user needs, the first thing that I would recommend is to come up with a data and insight strategy. So prioritizing what of your IT systems are not up to scratch. And again, you don't have to do everything. You don't have to come up with a full strategy. This shouldn't be a long document. This is instead, what are the key things IT-wise that are holding you back and that desperately need to be integrated to give you that single customer view. Next up, audience testing. So guerrilla testing, where you're just walking up to users with an iPad and you're testing different ideas. You can do focus groups as well, one-on-one testing, etc. The key thing that I'd recommend is just bearing in mind what kind of questions you're going to ask, and are you testing ideas for new things versus just verifying, what you've already got online. What we always do at Precedent is we prototype up new ideas and we test those rather than just verifying the fact that what a client currently has running isn't actually working very well for them. And then the third thing, goal tracking and reviews. So we all know we need to be paying attention to our metrics, that we have lots of different tools that we can use to see what users are doing online, run surveys, all that kind of stuff. The important bit of all of this is actually the brainstorming bit. Are you getting people within your organization together on a regular basis to look at the goals, the metrics, the data, to come up with ideas and actually action them, get budget behind them and action them to take advantage of what you've just spotted in that data and those metrics, being like a little mini Alibaba in a sense. So that's exposed, that's analysis. Now we're moving up into the top half of the care model. So now we're getting into contender territory. And if you're a contender, You have to tackle the rational, how your core offer stacks up to the competition. So again, somewhat of a famous example that we'll all recognize, ketchup. So I want to start with something simple, because sometimes tackling the rational, especially from a charity perspective, can be an odd concept to describe. And so I'll bring it right back to the basics, which is, okay, Heinz. Heinz about 15 years ago wanted to sell more ketchup. So they had a variety of different ways they could approach this. They could approach it like a marketer and just run more advertising for ketchup, buy Heinz ketchup. They could approach it like a product developer and change the flavor of the ketchup, make it taste better. They could make it cheaper. They could change points of distribution so that Heinz ketchup is available for purchase everywhere that you look. Instead, they tackled the rational part of the customer experience. In what way was Heinz ketchup, or could Heinz ketchup outdo the competition on just a rational point of something like ease, usability, etc.? When you think about it from that perspective, the solution is easy, right? It's getting the darn stuff out of the bottle. Now, this solution to Heinz's problem was genius, and not just because it's a nicer user experience, but if you think about it, just looking at that bottle on the shelf tells me as a user that it is going to be easy to use that product, right? I'm going to get it, I'm going to take it home, I'm going to put ketchup on my food. Not only more ketchup is going to come out of the bottle, which means I'm getting used to tasting my food with more ketchup on it, you know, so that I'm just everything I'm wanting ketchup on. But you know, Heinz was really, really ingenious with this, because all of this is communicated without me even having to touch that bottle to know that on a rational level it's beating the competitors. Right, now think of this from the perspective of a website, okay? How easy a website is to use, how easy it is to transact, to do things, and how transparent different processes are on a website. That's the equivalent of that squeezy bottle. So for British Heart Foundation, there were a whole load of things that needed to be made easier on the website. First of all, something as simple as search. Before, on the old site, you had one site search that searched everything on the site. And so whether you put in a location or a postcode or the name of a publication, it would all just come in this big mess of results, and the tagging didn't work properly. The search results weren't really prioritized very well. So despite the fact that a lot of users, their first port of call is to go straight to a search box, the BHF's old website would not allow you to get your results that way. So one of the biggest changes was actually consolidating search on the site so that you could have different filters. You know, I can do a location search, a publication search, etc., but that it's all in one place. That consolidated search can also be used across different sections of the site. If you do want to, for example, just search for publications in the publications section, then we just reuse that piece of functionality in that section. And, you know, so really efficient way of doing it. But that's just the first step of making the site and the experience with BHF easier. The next bit is mobile, because the BHF had seen the numbers increasing for years in terms of people using mobile, and the complaints as well, people not being able to do certain things on a mobile. So, you know, finding a BHF shop near you, that's an obvious one, and being able to do geolocation to say, you know, allow this website to access my location to find my nearest BHF shop, absolutely. But something like events, it's amazing the number of people who have started signing up for events just on a mobile phone, because maybe they've seen an ad, maybe they're out talking to someone and they say they've done a BHF event, and oh great, I'll sign up too. You know, so having the entire event registration process work seamlessly on a mobile phone, incredibly important. So the whole website for BHF is mobile friendly, is tablet friendly. It's actually using adaptive design rather than responsive, so you can be even more specific and prescriptive if you want to in terms of how that content stacks, rearranges. Do you display slightly different content when you want to? It gives them those options without having to have a separate mobile site, basically, that then requires two completely different processes for keeping that content up to date. Now, the result of doing improvements, not just the mobile improvements for events, but events in general, making it easier for people to do every single step of the event registration process online, has made huge differences in terms of signups. So Again, comparing 1 month of the new site to a month in the prior year, saw a 74% increase in event signups. And that's people also being able to do more of their registration online with absolutely no manual work required by BHF. Whereas before, there would be a lot of gaps in that journey, people having to pick up the phone, people having to do things in different stages, or reminder emails having to be sent out manually. Now the process is so much more automated and seamless, and it's all hosted through Sitecore. It's all built out of the Sitecore platform and ties into the CRM. Also with donating goods, the form that you used to have to fill in for donating goods was ridiculously unintuitive. It actually asked you how many living room items you would like to donate, how many bedroom items you would like to donate, and so, and the reason for these odd questions that it would ask you, that it asked you, was because this is how the shops had set it out initially for receiving these donations. So we actually worked with the stakeholders in BHF and the stakeholders in the shops to figure out, okay, what would actually be a more useful set of information to gather from people? And it's like, well, actually, how many large items, how many small items, etc. So changing things to the way that that form worked, and then changing things on the back end as well, so that the shops would be better connected, would have emails automatically triggered that would tell them that they had a request through, and do they want to accept the request, etc. All of that sort of thing built out of the website, and the result has been a 40% increase in donations. Again, comparing just 1 month of the site being live to the month in a prior year, and that is equivalent to about £1 million in donations, and that's again just 1 month, because overall donation of goods is worth about £31 million to BHF. And then the last example I wanted to give was the Heart Matters and their sort of heart health information. Heart Matters is their own publication, their own magazine that BHF run, and they have a lot of heart health tools and that sort of thing on the website. Before, they'd all been built on different platforms, all been built in different ways. So as part of the website redesign, creating a consistent experience and putting all of them onto the same platform, and the result of that has actually been a 25% increase in signups to Heart Matters, which is one of those directly accountable to the mission statement sort of metrics, because that is actually actively helping to win the fight against heart disease. So, if you're a contender, the important thing is to tackle the rational. Don't focus on being a champion before you're at least fixing the obvious problems that people are having. So checklist is that your products and services deliver to the current core need. And that sounds like a really obvious thing, but in so many cases we just sort of accept the fact that technology is not working that well, and like, oh, but that's just part of the process. Well, eliminating that part of the process. Next, that end-to-end processes are efficient. So doing a lot of automation is one of the key things that's helped the BHF to digitally transform, because you can imagine that removing the need for the staff to do a lot of that manual work, well, now they're freed up to do bigger and better things and come up with new ideas and new enhancements. I mean, right now we've got a backlog of all these features and enhancements that we're going to be launching soon, and over a long period of time onto the BHF website, and all the staff that normally would have been having to deal with the day-to-day and headaches of the old system, now instead they're contributing to new ways that the new system can make their jobs even easier and make experiences even better for supporters. And then lastly, it's easy to transact at every possible touch point, so mobile, tablet, etc. So if you're not in that spot, if you haven't been able to say yes to all those tick box items, then the next thing you want to be doing, your next steps, first of all, and it's going to sound like a biggie, but building a new website, one that's focused on transactions and not just sharing information. So everything on the web now should be focusing on a transactional experience, and whether that's buying stuff, signing up for things, etc. There's an information surplus on the web right now, so trying to cut down on that. Next, a new mobile offering, trying to solve a real-world problem by creating something useful on mobile. It doesn't have to be an app, but something that, even if it's like that BHF Find Your Local Shop example with a bit of geo-targeting. And then lastly, innovate the offering itself, building brand new digital services based on the needs and the demands that you're seeing on your website, on social media, etc. All right, last section. If you're a champion, you need to harness the emotional, how you elevate and delight your audiences. Now, this is the territory that BHF are entering now in the champion category, and this whole idea about elevating and delighting. Now, what's interesting though is people can sometimes get a little bit confused on those topics, elevate and delight, and it can be really easy to think that this is just about chasing followers on Facebook, chasing likes, chasing, trying to win awards for things, creative design awards and stuff. It has nothing to do with that. Instead, emotional has everything to do with that mission statement. So I said at the beginning I was going to show an example of Disney, and this is my illustration of what a true champion looks like. So to be the most magical place on earth, of course, Disney have recently released the Magic Band. Now, the Magic Band is wearable technology, right? You scan it to get onto rides, and you scan it to do things like get on the shuttle bus to leave Disney. You can scan it to get into your hotel room. But Disney have taken it a step farther. They've actually turned the Magic Band into something that starts as a pre-experience before you've even arrived at Disney. And these screenshots, by the way, are from Disney's own promotional video. So if you're going to Disneyland, this is the video you watch to see how the Magic Band works. So what it's explaining here is that with Mickey Mouse there on the left, you can book your character interaction. So if you want Mickey to meet you by the fountain and say happy birthday to your son and know his name and all that sort of thing, the Magic Band will let you do that, because the Magic Band knows where you are at all times and can let Mickey pinpoint you in a crowd and your son and know all the information about you. The third one there, the fireworks, you can pre-book things like going to the fireworks, and you can also pre-book rides, riding on the teacups, etc., to taking the whole element of queuing out of the equation. But it was this last feature that really blew me away and made me realize that Disney are the true champions of customer experience, because at first when I saw this feature, I thought it was creepy. This is actually called Memory Maker, and if you opt into Memory Maker, Disney will use its high-definition cameras that are stashed all over Disneyland to take pictures of you and your family for you while you're on holiday. And then you can later access those pictures, owned by Disney, on Disney's website. So, I looked at this and I was just completely, this is so not for me. I actually took it to one of our directors here at Precedent, just show him and go, God, this is so terrible. And it starts playing the video, and the first thing it says in the video is, now Dad can be in the photos too. And so the director is watching this, and he's saying that he watches the whole thing, and he looks at me and he goes, I haven't been in a photo for 5 years, because he's got 2 young boys, right? And I realized, of course, I'm not the demographic for Disney. I don't have kids. I'm not going to go to Disneyland. Nobody could pay me to go to Disneyland. But for the parents who maybe 5 years ago, before the Magic Band existed, before all this technology existed, they may have gone to Disney. Sure, they do it for the kids. Now, however, because of the Magic Band, how is that transform the experience, right? Before Disney, it's what? It's expensive, you have long queues, it's exhausting. The kids love it, but the parents, they're trudging along, and they're definitely not going to want to come back. Now with the Magic Band, the stress is gone. They can just access anything. They can feel like doors are just opening at the touch of their wrist, and that is digital transformation. That is taking the customer experience and making it the focus of driving your business strategy. Because really, Disney is now solving their biggest problem. They were starting to become victims of their own success, overcrowding, long queues, etc. Now they've solved it. So that's on the big enterprise level. What about British Heart Foundation? Now, British Heart Foundation are doing exactly what Disney are doing, not in the sense that they're going to have magic bands, but that they're looking back to their mission statement, that why do they exist, and they're going to decide every single development and enhancement, both on the website and beyond, entirely around driving that mission statement. And you can read more about it actually in their 2020 strategy. Their 2020 strategy is actually quite radically different than any strategy they've produced before. In the past, they've sort of split their focus to lots and lots of different things, and you can even see in this illustration I've got up here, this is the cover page of their strategy document. You know, they have things like prevention and engaging and growing, you know, support and survival and all this sort of thing. Now that center feature, that research feature, that is the thing that BHF are going to focus on for the next 5 years, and actually raising income to fund life-saving research. That is what they're reorganizing everything around doing and putting their focus entirely on that. And how are they going to meet that very ambitious aim and objective of raising as much money as possible? They're going to do it by focusing on the customer experience, elevating and delighting that user, that BHF supporter. And some of the ways that they're going to do it is with events. So already on the site, you'll notice a change. Before, when you'd sign up for an event on the BHF website, you would sign up as an individual. Now, the first question it asks you is, would you like to start a team? So actually adding team functionality right from the point of registration. And why is that? Well, you think, oh, well, it makes sense for BHF, right? More people doing the event, more people fundraising. No, it's from the emotional perspective of the user. Because is it actually quite daunting to do an event for a charity? Is it actually quite scary to think that, you know, you're going to not only have to do this big sporting event that maybe you've never done before, but you're also going to have to fundraise? And how do you fundraise? You know, so taking that element of fear and adding that social element, you know, again, thinking about that Maslow's hierarchy of need, building that into the registration process so that already people feel more confident, more empowered, and they feel like it's a great way for them to even expand and enhance that social circle that they've got. But that's just the starting point. Now, there are a whole slew, like I mentioned, there are a whole slew of enhancements that are already that are already going live on an ongoing basis and that are going to continue to go live for the next 6 months on the BHF website. And some of those include the ability for individuals who are already registered for an event to create their own team and even manage their own team on the website. So, you know, they could actually run a team like a team captain, do it in a completely automated way. They've never been able to do that before. That's something that would have been an arduous process, and trying to figure out how it would work with the CRM and all this sort of thing. We're actually now solving that problem with them, and we're going to be making that functionality live on the site. There are a whole slew of other things, though, that, you know, are in the works, and some of them are focusing on making things easier and faster for both staff and for the supporter, but every decision is being made based on this idea of harnessing the emotional element. How can we make people feel like an active participant in winning that fight against heart disease? And everything that they do both on the site and with BHF, how can they be reminded every step of the way that what they're doing is contributing directly to that fundamental mission statement and that personal reason why that individual decided to get involved with BHF in the first place. So it all comes down, you know, and here's kind of the ultimate checklist, but interactions elevate the customer socially, you know, on the event side of things in the case of BHF. Success in life is increased by continued interactions, so they're moving up that Maslow's hierarchy of need, and then customers feel listened to, appreciated, and valued, because really that's the most important thing. It goes right back to those customer experience problems, you know, they can't donate easily, they can't find what they're looking for, they don't feel engaged, you know, etc. That is the ultimate thing here. So if you are at that champion stage and you're looking for next steps, this is where you could actually start doing something like a content strategy. Now you might be thinking, we've already got a content strategy, or I'm already currently writing my organization's content strategy. The difference here is that until you've fixed those other points on the care model, doing a content strategy before this stage would just mean documenting all the things that aren't being done correctly, right? So this is when you get to the stages, you're documenting how you're going to be user-focused and goal-driven and work collaboratively across the organization, you know, etc. Next, it's campaigns and features that can be digital only or multi-channel, or new tech integration, so using beacons, wearables, etc. So that's the care model as presented within the BHF context, but what does it all mean? Now, I've talked about care and BHF and all the different steps, and hopefully by now you've maybe got a sense of where you might sit on that fitness scale yourselves. But it all comes back to this principle that every organization starts out meeting the needs of its audiences. Every charity starts out meeting the needs of its supporters, but that time goes on, those needs evolve. The why and the how start to get farther and farther apart. But you know what, it's an easy thing to start to understand what you need to do. Humans always need the same things, always want the same things now, you know, and into the future. The important question then becomes, why do you exist? How are you going to look at that mission statement, that reason for existence, and match it up to what you can do for those users, and use digital to create, to connect those two, and that's what's going to solve that problem. So hopefully you get a better understanding now of my company's mission statement. If you would like a copy of our report, you can download it at precedent.com/cx. And if you do need any help with any of the themes that I've talked about, then please do get in touch. And I'm going to put my LinkedIn information on the screen so you can see me and you can link in with me and ask me questions there. But we do have time for some questions. I know some have been sent through. We've got about 4 minutes, so I can answer them quickly. So we do have one question, which was, in terms of stakeholders, how did we work with the different stakeholders across the BHF, and what kind of engagement did we use with them? And that's a really good question, actually. We actually engaged quite significantly with all the stakeholders across the BHF, but one of the things the BHF did to help manage this engagement, which was really smart, was that they appointed kind of work stream leads. So these were people who weren't necessarily managers of different departments, but instead they were going to be sort of coordinators across multiple different areas of BHF, and they were going to be kind of a point of contact to collate information, to help organize engagement sessions, etc. And there were about 5 workstream leads across the entire project. And so we ran the whole project in an agile way. So we were actually working in sprints, and we were having sprint planning and reviews, and we were doing, you know, product backlog grooming, you know, all that kind of great agile stuff. And those work stream leads were really critical in that process, along with the head of digital at BHF, in order to keep all those different stakeholders engaged, but not let the project go off the rails in terms of trying to get everybody coordinated on an ongoing basis. Oh, and I've got another question that's come through. Are we able to tell you which CRM BHF use? I actually don't remember off the top of my head. I know that the CRM project is something else that's ongoing within BHF, so they're actually looking to do either do major upgrades or potentially even replace the CRM. And the CRM was one of the things that we had to plan around at lots of different points because of this ongoing project. The CRM really, it wasn't ready for web integration. So we did a lot of bespoke software development to make sure that Sitecore could speak to the CRM and vice versa, and that work is still ongoing. So no, unfortunately, I don't remember the name off the top of my head, but it's not one that you would necessarily choose to use for a website integration project. So unfortunately, I'm out of time now. We've only got a minute left. So thank you so much to everyone who's taken the time to listen. If you do have any other questions, we've actually got a LinkedIn group that we've created. So if you go to Precedent on LinkedIn, we've got both a discussion group, and then we've got our Precedent company page. So you can also post questions there. You can join the group, the discussion group, and post questions there, or you can send them directly to myself. But otherwise, thank you so much for listening, and I hope you found this information useful. If you have any feedback as well, please send it through. And otherwise, thank you so much for your time, and that's the end of the webinar.